Mrs. Adaora Bankole had everything Lagos could offer. A 6-bedroom house in Lekki Phase 1, a husband who wore success like a second skin, and a life that looked perfect from every angle. But behind the marble floors and designer curtains was a wound she had carried for 7 years. She could not carry a child of her own. 3 rounds of IVF, 2 miscarriages, 1 specialist in London who finally told her, gently but clearly, that her womb would never carry a pregnancy to term. The only path forward, he said, was a surrogate. Finding a surrogate in Lagos was not as simple as the London doctor made it sound. Agencies were expensive. Strangers were risky. Trust was the hardest currency of all. That was when Adaora looked closer to home, to the quiet, hard-working girl who had lived under her roof for 3 years. Ngozi Eze had come from Abia State at 19 with nothing but a phone number and a prayer. She had worked faithfully, sent money home every month to her widowed mother and 3 younger siblings, and never once complained about the long hours or the sharp tongue Adaora occasionally used when stress overwhelmed her manners. Adaora called Ngozi into the sitting room one evening and sat her down with the careful gentleness of someone about to ask an enormous favor. She explained everything: the failed pregnancies, the IVF, the London doctor's verdict. Then she asked, would Ngozi consider carrying their child through surrogacy? She would be well compensated. 2 million naira, paid in full upon safe delivery. 2 million naira. For a girl sending 20,000 home every month, that number was not just money. It was her mother's new roof, her brother's university fees, and her own freedom, all folded into one impossible offer. She said yes. A simple agreement was drawn up, not by a lawyer, because Adaora convinced herself that lawyers made things complicated between people who trusted each other. Just a handwritten document, 2 signatures, and a prayer over it by their local pastor. The embryo transfer was done at a private clinic in Victoria Island. 3 weeks later, the test confirmed what nobody dared say out loud until they absolutely had to. Ngozi was pregnant with twins. From that day forward, Ngozi was no longer the maid. She sat at the dining table for meals. She rested while others cleaned. She attended prenatal appointments in the back seat of the family's Mercedes. And somewhere in that gentle shift of treatment, something dangerous began to grow inside her. Something she would not name, not even to herself. Not yet. The pregnancy progressed beautifully. 8 months of careful meals, private doctors, supplements flown in from abroad, and Adaora hovering like a woman trying to love a child she could not yet hold. She decorated the nursery herself. 2 cribs, yellow walls, soft elephant print curtains. But in those same 8 months, something had changed in Ngozi that no prenatal scan could detect. Every kick she felt, every midnight craving, every morning she pressed her palm against her growing stomach, it was her body carrying these children. Her heartbeat they had first, her voice they would recognize before anyone else's. She began making quiet preparations. Nobody noticed. A bag packed slowly over weeks, baby clothes she bought herself from the market, a small amount of cash saved from her allowance, her mother's phone number written on a folded paper and tucked inside her bra. The twins arrived on a Tuesday morning. 2 boys, healthy, screaming with the full-lunged confidence of children who intended to make their presence known. Adaora wept so hard, the nurses asked if she needed a moment. Chief Emeka shook every hand in the room twice. Ngozi was quieter than anyone expected. She held each baby briefly, looked at them with an expression nobody quite knew how to read, then handed them back without a word. The nurses thought it was exhaustion. Adaora thought it was relief. Only Ngozi knew what it actually was. They returned home 3 days later. The nursery was ready, the nanny was hired, and Adaora barely slept. Not from exhaustion, but from the pure inability to stop staring at her sons. She named them Tobena and Chukwuemeka. She whispered their names into their ears every night like a secret only they could share. On the 6th night, Ngozi asked permission to take the babies for a short walk in the compound. Some fresh air, she said, since she had been indoors recovering. Adaora, half asleep and trusting, waved her hand and said yes without even opening her eyes fully. By midnight, Ngozi had not returned. By 1 a.m., the compound gate guard admitted, shamefully, that she had left through the side gate 2 hours earlier with a bag, the 2 babies strapped to her body with a wrapper, and the quiet, purposeful movements of someone who had been planning this for a very long time. Adaora scream that night woke every house on that Lekki street. Not the scream of a woman who had lost a maid, the scream of a mother who had just lost her children.
If this story touches your heart, please leave a like and subscribe, and share your thoughts with us below. Tell us what you think.
By dawn, Chief Emeka had called the police, hired a private investigator, and contacted every person he knew with influence in Lagos. But Lagos is a city of 20 million hiding places, and Ngozi had a 6-hour head start. The investigator, a sharp retired police officer named Mr. Dada, started with the basics. Ngozi's village in Abia State, her mother's address, the phone number she used to call home. Every trail led somewhere. But Ngozi was smarter than anyone had credited her for. She had not gone to Abia. She had gone north to a cousin in Kaduna nobody in Lagos knew existed. A woman who had agreed to house her quietly after months of secret phone calls made from a second SIM card Ngozi bought from a roadside vendor and never used inside the Bankole compound. While Ngozi settled into hiding, Adaora was unraveling. She sat in the empty nursery for hours, refusing food, touching the empty cribs, inhaling the faint baby smell still clinging to the yellow blankets. Chief Emeka watched helplessly, his own grief buried under the pressure of being the one who had to keep searching. 3 weeks into the search, Mr. Dada found the second SIM card trail, a number that had pinged a cell tower in Kaduna on the night of Ngozi's disappearance. It was the breakthrough they needed. But recovering the babies wasn't as simple as knowing where they were. Ngozi, acting on advice from her cousin's neighbor, a street-smart man who had watched too many Nollywood court dramas, had registered the twins at a local clinic in her own name, listing herself as their biological mother. When Chief Emeka's lawyer reviewed the situation, his words were careful but devastating. Without a properly signed legal surrogacy agreement, this case was going to court. And in Nigerian family court, possession and registration carried enormous weight. Adaora looked at her lawyer with eyes that had not slept properly in 3 weeks and said the only thing left to say, "Then we go to court. Whatever it costs, whatever it takes, those are my sons." And somewhere in Kaduna, Ngozi sat feeding 2 tiny boys who would never know in those early weeks that their existence had already become the center of a battle between two women, one who gave them life inside her body and one who had given everything to bring them into the world. The case of Bankole versus Eze opened at the Lagos High Court 6 weeks later. The courtroom was full, not just with lawyers and family, but with the weight of a story that had quietly spread through Lagos like wildfire.
Ngozi's lawyer argued from emotion. His client had carried these children, suffered for them, loved them with her body for 9 months. The bond was real, regardless of what any agreement said. Adaora's lawyer argued from evidence. The embryos were genetically the Bankoles entirely. IVF records, clinic documentation, and genetic testing all confirmed it. Ngozi had no biological connection to the children whatsoever, only a physical one.
Then, the handwritten agreement was submitted as evidence. Imperfect, unsigned by a lawyer, but undeniably real. Both signatures, both dates, the pastor's name listed as witness. It was not a legal masterpiece, but it was the truth written in both women's own hands. The judge called Ngozi to speak directly. She stood slowly and for the first time since she ran, looked across the courtroom at Adaora, really looked at her. What she saw was not the sharp-tongued madam of a Lekki mansion. She saw a woman who had been broken by years of longing, the same longing that had consumed Ngozi's own mother after her father died and left them with nothing.
Ngozi spoke quietly. No dramatics, no performance. She admitted she had planned the escape. She admitted she had grown attached in ways she hadn't expected and hadn't known how to stop. She admitted, finally, that she had been wrong. The judge deliberated for 4 days. When she returned, her ruling was clear. Genetic parentage, documented evidence of surrogacy intent, and the absence of any biological connection on Ngozi's part all pointed in one direction. Full custody was awarded to Mr. and Mrs. Bankole.
Tobena and Chukwuemeka came home on a Friday afternoon. Adaora sat on the nursery floor and held both of them against her chest for a long time, without moving, without speaking, without needing to. As for Ngozi, she returned to Abia State with nothing but what she had carried in. No 2 million naira, no babies, no future in Lagos. But 6 months later, Adaora did something nobody expected. She sent Ngozi's mother a new roof, anonymously, through a third party. Some debts, she decided, had nothing to do with money. And some wounds heal only when you choose grace over justice.